Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Vegan Organic Network session on foraging wild food. This is a seasonal guide, and we're going to be looking at what to forage for November and December. We're going to be looking at woods and hedgerows. These are a great place to connect into our landscape and see what we can find. My name is Juliette Bryant, and I am nutritional consultant and a forager, and I'm here with a beautiful team of foraging experts. So I'm going to introduce them to you. John, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name is John Dale. I live down in Cornwall, not far from Newquay. So we're really blessed with some really great coastal foraging sites. And I run a project in Cornwall called Willow Way, which uses veganic principles, and it's a place of education and healing.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us today. We're also joined by Jo Barker. Hello, Jo.
Hello. Yes, I live in Kent, and I'm a permaculture forest garden designer, maker and forager.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being with us today, Jo. Looking forward to hearing your delights shortly. And we're also joined this evening by Addie Fern. Welcome, Addie.
Hello. My name is Addie Fern. I'm involved with a project called Plants for Future, which has been going since the very late 80s. Piece of land in Cornwall that started off as a bare barley field, and we have converted it into an amazing haven of all sorts of useful plants with forest gardens, lots of interesting edible and medicinal plants, orchards. Also, we've reforested, so we planted half the land to native woodland. I've also studied nutrition, and I teach yoga, and I'm very much into eating wild food, natural food. So I'm here tonight. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Addie, for joining us. So that is the team tonight. Myself, Juliette, John, Jo, and Addie. So thank you all for being here, and thank you to all of you watching tonight. Just want to announce that next Tuesday at 7 p.m. there is Veganic Gardeners Question Time. This is another free online event, so do tune in to that Gardeners Question Time next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Hope you can join that. It will be a great show. So tonight, as I said, we are talking about foraging, a wild food guide. And I think this is something that is super important for us all to look into as food prices go up, as the soil degrades. So one of the things that's really important to consider is, how is veganic growing related to foraging? So for me, and I'm going to ask the panel this in a moment, but for me, you know, the most veganic we can get is being out on the earth and collecting food of the earth that hasn't had any input, it hasn't had any involvement from us. It's literally just of the earth. And ultimately, that's what I feel veganic is. It's about us getting back to our roots and connecting to how Mother Nature does things in that true raw form. So I'll quickly go through everyone. If you want to just share, Addie, how do you think veganic growing relates to foraging?
I very much agree with you, really. I mean, I've been interested in wild food since I was about 12, and just fascinated by the idea of just getting back to nature, really, and eating what was there, what was, you know, what's wild. And it's how our ancestors, you know, before agriculture, before cities, that is what they would have eaten. They wouldn't have cultivated initially. They would have eaten what was there. And it, like you say, it helps us get back to our roots. And also, wild plants are more robust. They're actually more nutritious. They contain more vitamins and minerals and vitality than most of our cultivated fruits and vegetables. So just to compare a dandelion with a lettuce, for example, you get every nutrient is higher in the dandelion than in the lettuce, except for water and sugar. So that just gives you a little example of that. So.
Brilliant. Thank you, Addie. Jo, do you want to share your thoughts on veganic growing and foraging?
Sure. So I would use the word perennial foods rather than wild, because I think everything in the garden, anybody's cultivated garden, which isn't technically wild, is up for foraging too. But I think an interesting lettuce and dandelion are the same family. They're both in the Asteraceae family, the daisy family. I think superior nutrition. There's so much we can get from eating this way. It's like, why even cultivate at all? But I've just been learning a lot about ethnobotany and how earth-based cultures, there is an element of cultivation too. So I think there's so much we can learn from our earth-based cultures as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jo. That's great. John, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said so far. I've been foraging since I was a kid. I just really resonated with connecting with the plants that were growing around me locally and that were edible. It just made sense to harvest them and eat them. And then just growing up, first of all, growing up in South Africa, it was obviously different climate, but foraging is something that can be adapted to wherever we are in the world. So yeah, it's just absolutely great to connect with the local plants, and like everybody said, much more nutritionally dense than what we buy in the stores. And yeah, it just totally makes sense. So I've been into it for a very long time. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, John, for sharing that. It is an amazing thing that we have so many resources at our fingertips, and that is our aim with you on this foraging guide, is to share some of those resources that you can all access. Jo, would you like to share a few of the rules of foraging for people?
Yeah, okay. So I think it's always important to make sure people realise there's some rules that if we stick to them, it keeps it safe and it keeps it ethical. So the number one rule is always to be 100% sure of what we forage, that we know what it is. That's really, really, that's the most important rule. Then we need to be careful where we forage from, sort of be mindful of chemicals, sprays. Most experienced foragers I know that have got ill have foraged near where farmers have been spraying. But of course we don't, because we're organic, but not everybody is. So that's two things. And of course, animal feces is another one. To be careful of that, of course. It's mostly common sense. There are some restrictions on some plants, so it's good to be aware of those, but I don't generally need to forage any of those. So there are some seaside brassicas which we need to be mindful of, but that's the only thing that I ever would want to eat that there's a bit of a question mark over. So there are some protected plants. And the fourth thing, we need permission to forage. Well, we should have permission where we forage, and if we keep to that, then we don't go wrong. But like I think we can, if we're respectful, that's the key, isn't it? So the number one rule: be 100% sure of what you're eating before you eat it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joe. That's great advice. And there's some amazing foraging guides out there that you can get. So do make sure you've got your books at the ready, and you can go out and identify. And hopefully what we're going to be doing today is going through a few of the plants that we really like at this moment. Obviously, there's a huge abundance of plants out there that you can choose from. But I think if you're just starting out, one of the great things is to have one or two plants that you can identify easily, so you can start building up your repertoire without being overwhelmed by all of the amazing plants that are out there, so you can start growing in that gradual manner. Okay, so we're going to get into the nitty-gritty now of talking about some amazing plants. So we're going to start with you, Joe, and I think you've got a lovely video, but I'll hand over to you and you can share your amazing input.
Okay, we were asked to just do one plant. That's quite hard. So I've done burdock. I wanted to cover roots. This is my sample here. So I've got a little video showing where this came from. It's not a great example, but burdock root, hugely medicinal. Anyway, here's the video, and then I'll say a few more words afterwards. Dan, if you could show the video, please. Thanks. Dan's hiding in the background. I don't think we've mentioned him.
But here, this is meant to be a lawn, and there's lots of what's called biennial things growing here and perennial. So it really helps to remove these. So burdock is part of the Asteraceae family, which I call the daisy family, and that's a really good one to know about. That's a really good one, definitely. So burdock, you can eat the young roots, and it's supposed to be of supreme nutrition, which I think anything forage seems to be. This is supposed to have inulin in, which is like a prebiotic, really good for people who are diabetic. It's also present in Jerusalem artichokes. But anyway, let's get back to this beautiful plant. So you can eat it raw, and it's delicious, or you can chop it. You have to obviously wash it, but you can chop it up and have it in soups. You can dry it and have it as tea, and it ferments as well. My parents eat borscht, not beetroot. So it's important to eat root things during the winter. I know not everybody does, but that's where our sugars and carbohydrates are that give us lots of energy, like carrots and potatoes and parsnips. And we've got burdock.
So that was a bit bumpy from my end. So I hope you got the gist of it. So I just want to finish off very briefly that this isn't the easiest one to identify as a starting plant, but I thought it's a really good one because it's really medicinal. It's a really good detox plant. And in other countries like Japan, they grow it as a vegetable. Just wanted to say that it's known, it's got lots of other uses, like it's where biomimicry came in with the Velcro. And somebody's made lots of money from being inspired by this plant. We can eat the young leaves, and we don't eat the root after it's had a flower. That's the key. But really, really super good. And we can also have it with dandelion, sneaking an extra plant. They do go together. Both good roots to eat in the winter. Okay, thanks.
So Joe, why is it your favourite plant that you've chosen? I know it was hard just to pick one, but why did burdock come up as your favourite one?
Well, I speak to plants and it spoke to me, just that I was looking for a root to share. So it's not really my actual favourite, but it's just an amazing plant. I just love it. It's delicious. Yeah, it's the most delicious root that I know. I think this is the time of year in the foraging calendar that roots come into their own. So I wanted to share a root. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. Does anyone from the panel have anything they want to add? And I just want to say, if anyone watching has any questions, please do type them into the YouTube and we will see if we can answer them as well. Addy, do you have anything you want to share about burdock? Don't feel you have to, but if you do want to, please feel free.
Yeah, it's a root that I think it's cultivated in Japan as a really healthy food. I'm personally not the biggest fan of it, but I think probably because I didn't, when I last tried it, I didn't actually eat it at the right time. I ate it sort of, I think it gets better if you leave it in the ground for longer, rather than getting it sort of September. If you leave it in the ground for longer after it's had a little bit of frost, then the taste kind of mellows a bit, because I found it very strong. And it's also used medicinally, I think, for I think it's actually even in a formula called the case formula, and might be wrong, might be the
That's right.
different plant. But I think it's in the case formula, which is used in the treatment of cancer. It's a herbal treatment, so it's got lots of good medicinal benefits.
Amazing. Thank you, Addie. John, do you have anything you want to share about burdock?
Not really. I think you guys have covered everything. Yeah.
Okay, no worries. One of the things I wanted to share about burdock is it's actually also an aphrodisiac. So it's been shown, there have been studies done that it shows that it increases sexual function. So another great reason to use it. A lot of the roots, you know, with that, if you look at that kind of shape of a root, it's got that kind of phallic look to it. So it's hard and it's woody. So you can take what you want from that. So that's another little interesting tip on burdock. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next plant. John, I believe we're going to go over to you now and do your plant. So over to you.
So yeah, being close to the sea, I've chosen sea beet or sea spinach. Let me place the screen there. It is an ancestor of spinach or beetroot, sugar beet, and Swiss chard. It's something I really enjoy to forage down here, and it's just got so much more nutritional value than shop bought greens, basically, and it's seasonal, local, free. And it's just, yeah, it's just something I really enjoy to eat. Yeah, I've got a little video. I'm not sure if that's going to show after this.
Hey everybody, this is John Dale. Checking
When
out
where I foraged it from.
on the beach. Here we are, and I'm going to be talking about something here, which is edible. This is nori, or lava. They used to make lava bread out of it, or nori. They make sushi wraps. So here it is, growing on the rocks locally in Cornwall.
Okay, so it was a bit of a mix-up there. I did 2 videos, and what you saw there was lava or nori. This is it here, if I can get some light on it. It's a local seaweed, and it grows all over the coast in the UK, and it is just really good. You've probably heard of lava bread. It's just super packed with nutrition, and sushi rolls are made out of nori as well. So I've got some of the nutritional value as well. It's per 100 grams, it's 356 milligrams of potassium, which is 10% of the dietary requirements for the day. It's 6% protein, whopping 65% vitamin C. It's 9% iron. It's vitamin B6, 10%. Calcium, 7%. and sodium 48 milligrams, which is 2% of the daily dietary intake. So yeah, it's just something really worth. Sea vegetables are really worth getting to know, and they're just super high in so many different minerals, and yeah, it's really worth intake, getting into our diets. The one thing I would say though is be careful where you find them. Certain areas are polluted, and obviously watch out for tides. Low tide is the best time to find. Other than that, yeah, in Cornwall we're quite spoilt with beautiful coastlines, with lots of great things to find.
Brilliant. Thank you, John, for sharing that. Really, really interesting and amazing, isn't it, that you can find, nori, which you think of as something from far away shores, right here in the UK. And it's great you mentioned about the pollution. I was going to ask you that question about that. So thanks for mentioning that. So does anyone want to share, opening up to the panel, anything about nori or sea beet that Hey, Addie, you're waving your hand. Do you want to share?
Yeah, I'll go for the seaweed first. Seaweeds are also, as well as being a really good source of minerals, the alginates within the seaweed have also got quite a few really useful medicinal properties. And one of them, I think, is actually to help to remove heavy metals out of the body, so helping to detoxify the body. I mean, and I think we've all got heavy metals in our body. If you've got mercury fillings in your teeth, if you were alive when they used to put lead in petrol, lead pipes for copper pipes for water, there's heavy metals all over the place. So it's a useful thing. One of the things that I'd also like to mention is being careful not to over harvest with wild food. It can be very tempting if you're going for a walk and you find something and you think, oh wow, let's pick loads of this. But if everyone goes and does that, then the plant can just disappear. So we just need to be really careful of how we harvest, and to bear in mind that there's a lot of us, and very often these plants are sort of not quite so abundant. And then with the sea beet, just a little word of caution with the sea beet is it's quite high in oxalic acid, like all these things in the Chenopodiaceae, the spinach, beetroot family. So again, not to overdo the oxalic acid, as it can hold on to and remove a certain amount of nutrients like calcium, magnesium and zinc from our ability to absorb them. It kind of binds with them and stops us absorbing them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Addie, for sharing. Okay, Joe, over to you. Do you have anything you want to add about either of those two plants? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, just to say thanks for adding that other rule, Addie. Of course, we need to be respectful, and it's really important that we learn to do foraging where we're taking care of the land and not disrespecting it, and that's something that's really, really key. Looking at both, so interesting about both. I love the sea beet. I just want to say that I love foraging every day of the year, and sea beet is available to me every day of the year. It's one of those rare plants that whenever I go to the beach, I can harvest a bit. I don't take much. I just have enough for one meal, and I steam it when I get home. I live near some lovely beaches too in Kent, and I can hear someone cooking in the background. If you could,
Dan, I think it might be you. Can you mute yourself, please? Because there's a lot of banging and chopping.
So, yeah, the Chenopodiaceae family, again, I was thinking, I know that family also collects heavy metals, and if you have it near the road, it's not so great to harvest. So, a bit like the seaweeds. So, I think that's another thing to bear in mind. And yeah, so I think this is I love this, the fact that you can recognise it as well. It's a really easy one to recognise because it looks just like spinach that you'd grow in the garden or buy in the shop. So, for a starter forager, it's a really good one, because if it looks like spinach, it probably is, but you still need to be 100% sure. So I always look for poisonous lookalikes, especially with mushrooms, actually, but this is a good thing to do if you're beginning. And as for the seaweeds, I mean, I think it's really nice to know that all seaweeds are edible in this country. Apart from something that John taught me in the summer, was that sometimes some seaweeds get drifted onto the beach from abroad, which might be a bit iffy, but generally we would only harvest seaweeds that are alive, like fresh. So they're all planted with their little root things, so we need to cut them or pull them gently off. But yeah, so all seaweeds are edible, but we just need to be careful where we collect and not from polluting places. I know foragers around Kent that won't eat seaweed here, but I have my foraging places. But we do have a problem with southern water and pollution, which has been ongoing for a few years, which is a real pain.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Joe. I want to add about the seaweed. It's great that we can eat all the seaweed in this country. One of the things I know about nori is it's got 10 times more calcium than milk, your standard dairy milk. And this being a veganic show, obviously this is a really important thing to think about. So many people say, well, what about your calcium? Where do you get your calcium from? Well, nori has 10 times more than your cow's milk. So that's a great thing to tell people on that one. The other thing that I really like about the seaweeds are that they're high in iodine, and iodine is so important. We're seeing a huge rise in iodine deficiencies, which affect the thyroid. So having that iodine through your seaweeds is a really good thing. So thank you, John, for bringing those beautiful plants to our attention today. Okay, so Addie, it's over to you on your plants today.
Right, I mean, I've got two, but I'll do one at a time, and I'll do the second one if there's time. So the first one, I don't know if people can see, how well people can see. These are the leaves of a ginkgo tree, not a wild plant, but I'm currently temporarily, thankfully, in London, and these are grown very often as a street tree. So they have, they're very, very beautiful leaf. They're called, the common name is the maidenhair tree. Sometimes you see a little kind of notch roughly in the middle. This one doesn't really have a notch. And someone once said that if they haven't got a notch, whether they've got a notch or not, delineates whether it's a male or a female, but I'm not quite sure which is which or if that's true, but I just thought I'd mention it. But there's a number of interesting uses. First of all, the leaves are an amazing medicine. These have gone yellow, so ideally the best time is to pick them just before they go yellow. They are very high in substances that improve the circulation of blood to the brain, and they help to prevent Alzheimer's, and they help to halt or at least almost halt Alzheimer's if it's present. Goes well with also things like ginger. So you can make a tea from the leaves. I personally don't like the taste that much, so I put it in when I make kombucha, which is like a fermented health drink made from green tea. So I add it in as well, and then you get the benefits of the ginkgo. The other thing about the ginkgo tree is when it is mature, the female trees will produce seeds which are enclosed in a fleshy fruit, which is technically not a fruit, but it's a fleshy material. And the seed is edible, and it's it's used as a staple food actually in Southeast Asia, and it's high in kind of starch and fat, so it's quite a nutritious food, and protein as well. The fruit-like structure around the seed is interestingly very, very stinky. It smells absolutely revolting. And the interesting thing about this is that the squirrels won't touch it. So a lot of people who are trying to grow nuts or harvest wild nuts have trouble because the squirrels always seem to get there first. But with ginkgo, the squirrels aren't interested. So it's a good nut tree. And it's also a very beautiful tree as well, ginkgo.
Beautiful. Thank you, Addie. Ginkgo is a real stunner. I love it. Does anyone else have anything they would like to share on it? John, do you have anything you'd like to share? Oh, you're muted, John.
I can second the fact that the fruit is absolutely vile smelling. I come across some one time at the Botanic Gardens in Oxford, and knowing that it was from a ginkgo, I thought, oh, I know it's good for the brain function, the leaves, those. I thought, well, let me give this a sniff and a try, and it was, yeah, absolutely vile. So it's good to know that the nut inside the seed is edible. I haven't actually given that a try yet, but yeah, it sounds, I'd like to do that. I'd like to try that sometime. So yeah, thanks, Addie.
Amazing. Thank you, John. Joe, do you have anything you'd like to share on?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me that the fruits are usually ready at this time of year in November. So we've got some trees in Canterbury, so I will go along there later this week and see if I can harvest some more nuts. Just to say that I like just taking a leaf and eating it, and I honestly think it makes me clever really quickly. Like, it does something for me. I do a bit like rosemary. I think it just, I don't know, it's really good. I like it. I grow it in food forests as a medicinal plant.
Beautiful. Thank you, Joe. I think, Addie, you had something you wanted to add in there.
Yeah, I forgot to say that the seed, I think you have to cook it rather than eat it raw. I think that's how it's used. I think you can boil it or something, steam it. I think there's something that's not quite brilliant if you eat it raw. So I just thought I'd best mention that. I just thought, oh, John's going to go and try it. Oh, he's going to eat it raw. Right, I best remind people it needs to be cooked.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, Addie, for that. One of the things I use ginkgo for is I make a tea with it, with the leaves. I've got a tree that we've got growing here, and it's very good for respiratory conditions. So it's really good for coughs as well. So it's another thing to add in. And I've been doing quite a lot of research on ginkgo for use in Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis. And there seems to be a lot of evidence that it's very supportive of, it's neuroprotective, like it's neuroprotective with Alzheimer's. It also works to protect with the myelin sheath and the degradation of that for things like multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's. So another potential use of it. So go and find some leaves, don't take too many, and start making some nice teas with it, I think is a great thing to do. Thank you, Addie, for sharing. Okay, so it's over to me now. I am in love with mushrooms, mainly the bracket fungus. They're my favorite ones. So today I'm going to talk about this beauty here, which is a birch polypore mushroom. So birch polypore grow on birch trees. So that's an easy identifier. You know that you can find it. If it's on a birch tree, it's most likely to be birch polypore. And the exciting thing about the bracket fungus, when I say a bracket fungus, it's these hard woody mushrooms that grow off trees. They're not on the ground, they're growing off the trees. That makes them a bracket fungus. And in this country, there are no poisonous bracket fungus. So some of them, like chicken of the woods, you might get an upset stomach. A few people do, but generally the bracket fungus, they're not going to kill you. unlike a lot of the ground mushrooms. But always really important, as Joe said before, do your research, identify correctly, and make sure you know what you've got. So with the birch polypore, this has so many incredible uses, and I'm just going to talk about a few of them because I could probably talk all day. It grows on dead trees, so you know that it will grow on a dead tree. That's a good thing to kind of help you identify it. And it's antifungal. So a lot of people get surprised that something, a fungus, is antifungal. Well, how that happens is because a lot of these bracket fungus, they send out a chemical signature. So they kind of say, oi, this is my patch, off you go, to the lower mushroom species. So when we use them internally on things like candida, which is a fungal overgrowth, they're pushing them out because they are a higher type of fungus. So they're great antifungals. You can also make plasters with them when they're young and fresh. You can peel the skin off and wrap it round a cut. They've also got the ability to stop bleeding. So this is why they're so effective as a plaster. So if you're out and you cut yourself and you find some birch polypore, then you can make a plaster from it to stop the bleeding. Lots of research into its antiviral nature. It's a natural antibiotic, very, very good for the digestive system, to help balance the digestive system, and a very high anti-inflammatory. So it contains several triterpenoids, and these are very anti-inflammatory. So a lot of people walk around in an inflammatory state. So this is going to help you with that. Also natural antiseptic. One of the really exciting things about birch trees and anything that grows off of a birch tree is birch trees contain betulinic acid, and the mushrooms are utilizing that betulinic acid, and betulinic acid has been shown to kill cancer cells whilst not affecting other healthy cells. So this is an amazing quality of that. So I just want to talk very briefly how you would use a birch polypore, because you can't eat it. So I know we're talking about edible foods. I got a bit of it in there. But what you would do with this is you would chop it up into strips, and then you can either make a tea with it. You would simmer it for 30 minutes to 2 hours to extract the benefits, or you make a tincture where you chop it up and you put it into a 40% alcohol. You leave it for 4 to 6 weeks, and then you strain it, and then you take a pipette of that a day. So those are the two ways that you would really use the birch polypore for its medicinal benefits. So over to the panel. Does anyone have anything they would like to share on birch polypore? Anyone? No? Addie, do you want to say anything on birch polypore? Oh, you need to unmute.
I've learned some stuff I didn't know. I always thought it wasn't edible. So, I mean, I didn't realize it was medicinal. So that's great. I'm going to start using it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's one of the ones that is so available to us. You know, we can find birch polypore in so many places. So it's a great one to go out and harvest now and make incredible medicine for our digestive system, for our immune system, you know, to support us with, you know, the seasonal coughs and colds.
Oh, can I just add something actually?
Yes.
Look, from the vegan perspective, that mushrooms are meant to be more animal than plant. So there's a whole load of different nutrition around mushrooms. So I think it's really important to eat them, and I feel like I think we're meant to eat them. I think they're amazing too. So thanks for bringing that, Juliette.
I think they're personally my favourites, the mushrooms. I think I was a fairy sat on top of a mushroom in a previous life. John, did you have anything you wanted to say about the birch polypore? You're muted, so if you want to unmute. You're muted still. That's it.
Okay, yeah. I think you covered loads there. I just wanted to confirm, is that birch polypore the same as chaga?
No. So chaga is, we can only find chaga up in cold areas. So you'd find chaga in kind of Scotland, Siberia, in very cold climates on birch trees, and it grows almost attached to the tree. It grows from the inside out, and it's actually like a cancer on a tree. Chaga is actually being used a lot at the moment, and there's a lot of problems with over harvesting of it, so we're kind of running low. But birch polypore is very, very common down in the south, kind of all over. It doesn't need cold climes, so it's a very common one to find, and you'll find it growing in all different shapes and sizes. So do have a look for it. So we are almost out of time. We're almost out of time. We've had some questions, which one of them was, what do you guys use for compost? I think this is probably going to be answered in the gardener's question time next Tuesday at 7 p.m. So do tune in to that then. Does anyone want to add a closing note before we finish? Addie, do you want to unmute yourself?
I just wanted to, because I've got these that I picked, so I wanted to just very briefly talk about them. These are hawthorn berries, and they're edible. They're not hugely exciting, but they are edible. And we've got a number of different species of hawthorn that are nicer. They're also a really good heart tonic, gentle heart tonic. And the leaves are sort of, when they first come out in the spring, they're also edible. So I just had to get that one in, and it's just a lovely plant. So
lovely, yeah. Thank you, Addie. Hawthorn is one of my favourites. It is, I think, one of the most brilliant heart medicines we can have on so many levels. There is a stone inside the hawthorn berry, so you can't just pop it in your mouth. You need to just nibble around the edge. Great one to add to fire ciders or kind of a winter immune tincture. Does anyone else want to add anything about the hawthorn quickly?
It's my favourite too, and you can eat all of it, the flowers, the berries and the leaves. I eat the leaves all through the year as well. Good choice.
They are lovely to add to salads and smoothies and lots of different things.
And they're native and wild and everywhere.
Exactly. John, do you want to say anything about the hawthorn?
Yeah. Well, the berries make a nice ketchup. So that's one way of using them as well. You do need to gather quite a lot of them. But yeah,
they're good for fruit leather as well. You can mix them with blackberries and apples and stuff to make a nice fruit leather. Brilliant. Well, thank you guys all for watching our foraging seasonal guide. We're going to be back in January with another session. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Addie, Joe and John, for being here and for sharing your amazing wisdom. We look forward to seeing what plants you come up with next. You know, as we enter the depth of winter, people often think there isn't anything to forage. But you'd be wrong. There's lots, and we're going to reveal more on the next show. So thanks everyone for joining us, and see you soon. Don't forget vegan organic question time, a gardener's question time next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.